I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Mrs. McLean?
Here.
Ms. Seward?
Here.
Mr. Valentine?
Here.
Mrs. De Silva?
Here.
And Mrs. Messick.
Here. Pledge of Allegiance. A seal. And Brick, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? It is recommended for the approval of the May 11th, 2026 regular meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Valentine. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. De Silva. Please call the roll.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva?
Yes.
Mrs. McLean?
Yes.
Ms. Seward?
Yes.
And Mrs. Messick.
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. Approval of tonight's agenda. It is recommended to approve tonight's agenda as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. De Silva. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Seward. Please call the roll.
Mrs. De Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Seward?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mrs. McLean?
Yes.
And Mrs. Messick.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Public participation. Chelsea Leuven. My apologies if I pronounced that incorrectly.
Good evening. My name is Chelsea Leuven, 2007 Durham graduate. Like many have expressed, I care deeply about the safety of our children traveling across Glick Road Bridge and down Riverside. Safety needs to remain a top priority. But tonight, I am here to discuss the importance of improving the district's feeder patterns and ensuring these new maps have longevity, regardless of how many students it affects now, as long as it sets our district up for future success. Every student in our community deserves the opportunity to travel with their classmates from kindergarten to senior year. This is a privilege, and as the #1 school district in Central Ohio, we should be striving to achieve this standard. Adolescent depression and anxiety is at an all-time high, and as a result, we should be prioritizing students' emotional well-being just as much as our school's academics. When discussing feeder patterns, we're not just drawing lines on a map. We're shaping childhoods, friendships, communities, and the sense of belonging our students will carry with them for years to come. I know this because I lived it. My freshman year, I attended Kaufman and was then redistricted to Jerome when it first opened. As sophomores, we walked into a school that had no tradition, school spirit, history, or community, and we were left clinging on to the few friendships that had survived the district's many redistrictings. Our bleachers at sporting events remained empty. Our student council barely existed. Our school dances and events always had low student attendance. We couldn't even pull it together to have a 10-year high school reunion. Even after 3 years in that building together, there were classmates whose names I didn't even know, and I definitely didn't have any childhood memories with them. There were people who I shared hallways with, but never truly shared a high school community with. And that wasn't because we didn't care. It was because the district system never allowed these relationships and traditions to form due to the constant redistricting we were victims of. Now, nearly 20 years later, I look at my own daughter standing in the Penny kindergarten bleachers besides children she laughs with every day, children she believes she will grow up with. And I realize that out of those 80 students, she will only attend a middle school with 24 of them, and a high school with even fewer. Nearly 70% of her kindergarten class she will never see again after 5th grade. Is this really the best the #1 school district can do? A building doesn't just become a high school. Just like a house isn't always a home, Successful school districts are built over decades through shared memories, traditions, neighborhood pride. It consists of alumni who are proud of where they were raised, a community that provided them with so much during their most formative childhood years. Isn't this the community we want? One our students are proud to be a part of, not one where they're shuffled around every couple of years at the board's discretion. As you make these decisions, I urge you to prioritize feeder patterns, the longevity of, thank you.
Brian Gibson.
Good evening. As you decide the board policy that will inform the MAC Makers' efforts, I ask that you consider what this high school redistricting process has lacked compared to the prior elementary and middle school process, namely consistency, honesty, and transparency. Many Jerome Village residents have said, we followed policy 5120 before and it worked. If we follow it again, it will work here too. And I agree. But I think much of the broader Dublin community doesn't realize how difficult and contentious that earlier process actually was. What made it ultimately successful was not that everyone agreed. It was that the district established clear criteria, communicated its reason earnestly, and was consistently transparent. People may not have liked the outcome of that process for them, but they understood how we got there, and we did its best to move, and how that process did its best to move the whole community forward. Unfortunately, this process has felt very different. In the first round, when a loud, litigious minority organized against a fair, reasonable, and defensible outcome, the district caved. Then we were promised a rebooted process with broader participation and enough time to make thoughtful decisions. Instead, what we have is a timeline cut in half, hurried from late spring into early summer, when many families are completely swamped with end-of-year activities or traveling. Further, biased community feedback tools combined with flawed interpretations have produced skewed conclusions that favor the same vocal minority that derailed the last process, driving decision-making that could negatively affect hundreds of families for years to come. I can't help but feel we have a conclusion in search of a process, rather than a process in search of a conclusion, that we will prioritize the interests of a small but influential group over what makes the most sense for the broader community. And I also can't help but feel that if we get back to the basics of consistency, honesty, and transparency, that we will ultimately make the best decision for everyone, even if it's not the one everyone loves. I urge the board and administration to acknowledge the flaws of this process and change course. Please restore the trust that defined prior redistricting efforts. Even though we are well into the process, it's never too late to do the right thing. Thank you.
Susan Koski.
Good evening. My name is Susan Koski, and I'm a resident of Jerome Village. I'm here tonight to urge the board to focus on student safety, proximity, and practicality as you work through this redistricting process. The October 2025 traffic study estimates a 24-minute commute from Depp Elementary to Scioto High School. Sending students 24 minutes away from their home high school across dangerous roads raises serious concerns for families like mine. That 24-minute estimate does not account for school bus transportation. For many students, the actual commute would be substantially longer. A longer commute does not just mean inconvenience, it means more exposure to unsafe driving conditions, a less connection to the school community. After-school activities and the ability to socialize are a critical piece of a child's development. Participation in clubs and sports would be made exceedingly difficult when students live such a far distance to their school. The Depp to Scioto route requires students to cross the Scioto River and travel heavily congested roads, including Riverside Drive and Glick Road during rush hour. Even the district's own traffic study highlights concerns with this route. It is the only school pairing in the study that does not include bicycle or pedestrian travel estimates because there is no safe or realistic way for students to walk or bike between those schools. It's also the only section that specifically notes multiple high-speed intersections along the route. If walkability and bike accessibility are considered important factors in redistricting decisions, then those standards should apply equally to all students in the district. The Shawnee Hills Police Chief was recently interviewed and expressed his concern about student safety as they travel along that route. The board cannot ignore his concerns and still have student safety in mind. Our children's safety must come first. I ask the board to honor the district's original guiding principles and keep proximity and student safety at the forefront of this process. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Stephen Schott.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Schott. I'm a husband and a father, and I reside in the northwestern part of our district. And I am grateful to know that no matter how this turns out, my kids are going to get a great education. As to how this turns out, show a map of our school boundaries to a neutral third party. Then say, I want to take a kid who lives at Eversole Middle and send them all the way to Scioto. The response you get from that neutral third party will tell you everything you need to know about how irrational that is. Now, I commend those on the board who have recognized the problematic nature of the May 11 draft. Your new language, however, despite good faith efforts, still suffers from the same issue that plagued the first draft for Factor A. As written, this board's resolution is not guidance. It is a rewrite of 5120. The revised language still tells the mapmaker that all factors come into play only after the directive to move as few students as possible. Unless you remove the last sentence in Factor A, I fear you may as well just say you may only move students in the north. 5120 exists for a reason, and it exists in part because all stakeholders involved bring with them bias, myself included. 5120 is an objective set of criteria that considers all members of this community equal. It does not take sides, and it levels the playing field so that no one part of the community has a greater voice than any other. We know disruption here is inevitable. So the question that comes, disruption plus what else? Therein lies the most serious issue with this resolution. Irrespective of your intention, this resolution still says that safety in transporting students is secondary to inconvenience. This is not hyperbole, this is real. That traffic study is real. That crash that just happened is real. Now imagine sending 600 kids over that bridge every single day, twice a day. The impact on a family is real. What do you tell a single parent who has a student at Eversole and at Scioto who both want to take part in extracurriculars? How does that parent choose? Because that situation may force the parent to choose. We also know kids do not sleep enough as it is. So now we get the Eversole kid on a bus far earlier. That's disruption plus unnecessary safety and health factors. Now, while some have claimed that this community wanted this line, that is inaccurate. At best, one can say a portion said that. Any reasonable person in this community wants to see as few families impacted as possible, but not at the expense of all other considerations, especially safety. Yes, this is difficult, but you must represent all of us. If you follow 5120, that's been on the books since '96, you can objectively look parents in the eye and tell them you understand why they don't like the result, but you had to consider everyone. If you leave in the last sentence in Factor A, you cannot. Please consider safety, follow your own policy, and do not favor any neighborhood over any other.
Janelle Joseas.
Thank you.
Not a problem. My name is Janelle Joseas, and I'm a parent to 4 children who are or will be a part of Dublin City Schools. I'm here today to ask you to remove the language regarding moving as few students as possible. It's contradictory to prioritizing safety and transportation concerns. And if the purpose of the pause in this process in the fall was to provide transparency, the process this spring should guarantee it and not create an outcome that is putting children at risk. As our elected officials, I would hope that you would hear these concerns. Our students love that they can ride their bikes or walk to school, and for parents it gives a flexibility to navigate opportunities for our kids to participate in different activities. This applies across this district and was seen in response from respondents in the survey regardless of their current school assignments. Its prioritization should be seen across the geographic locations of the district too. Proximity to the school was a priority for nearly every respondent in the survey, so shouldn't it be a priority for nearly every student then? To potentially have students travel from the northern part of the district to Scioto creates so many concerns for parents and families. It's inherently unsafe to ask these students and their caretakers to deal with Dublin Road, Riverside, or 33 or 270 during peak hours. And it also puts the risk of families to navigate transportation for school as well as extracurricular activities. We all saw the accident that occurred last week on Riverside, and I can say as a parent that it struck a chord of real fear about the prospect of that ever being our kids or a full bus. In a Columbus Dispatch article dated August 28th of 2024, the headline was Dublin City Schools to expand Scioto High School for, quote, a short-term solution for population growth. Is the safety of our students, the increased transportation time and stress for families, and the increased divisiveness amongst our community worth this short-term plan? If the growth, because of Nationwide Realty's continued unchecked footprint, will be the northern part of the district, then how does planning to move students from the north to the south really plan for that growth? As part of this effort and transparency, the board created the community survey. The survey, if intended to truly hear the community's voice, was written with leading questions and contradictory takeaways. For example, there were countless comments in the survey about question 3 having a leading response as one of the 2 options available. The conversation at the last board meeting disregarded not only the fact that minimized students moved had a lower percentage of respondents than prioritized proximity for all students, it also disregarded many of the comments that showcased the concern from the respondents to framing the survey in a way that was statistically significant in results that were already available. There was no cross-tabulation in the responses from the board's takeaways. We are so lucky in Dublin to have incredible schools across the board. The focus of concern for myself and so many others is purely safety and practicality. We know community members have produced and sent to you all very thoughtful sample maps that are data-driven and responsive to the needs of the community requests, ones that focus on safety, proximity, and practicality. We appreciate your time, and we hope that you consider the safety of our kids and the realities of our families as priority.
Alicia Pauling.
Hello. At its core, the intense angst driving this community opposition stems from an unspoken truth everyone knows but only talks about behind closed doors. There are wide disparities in performance access across our district schools, and if Scioto were generally perceived as equal in academic outcomes to Jerome and Kaufman, this level of resistance simply wouldn't exist. Academic outcomes matter immensely. The district itself proudly markets Eli Penny's blue ribbon recognition for outstanding academic achievement and strong outcomes, and rightfully so. But if those academic outcomes are important enough to advertise, important enough to attract families, and important enough to define our district's excellence, then they must be considered when drawing the very boundaries that determine which students get access to them. We can't use excellence as a marketing tool, but ignore it as a redistricting criteria. So next, let's address the concern over creating islands. If undeveloped land in the north is assigned to Scioto, islands already exist in parts of this district. Riverside Elementary is an island that attends Davis Middle School, surrounded by homes that attend Sells. Thomas Elementary has an area right behind Britton Parkway that is surrounded by students attending Indian Run. And there are other examples. Islands have existed throughout the district for years. Using them now as an excuse to block a common sense solution to the growth in the north is just that, an excuse. How is it that open enrollment to any of our high schools is not allowed, but anyone purchasing a new build in Jerome Village can attend Jerome when it is already over capacity? The statistically valid Fallon survey told us exactly what this community expects: move the fewest number of high school students possible. Jerome is overcrowded, Scioto has space. This isn't rocket science. You move the overcrowding to where the space is. Finally, on safety, let me say this plainly. The safety concerns of one neighborhood are echoed in another. Every parent in this room cares about their child getting to school safely. Families are currently navigating Bethel Road, Sawmill Road, Hayden Run Bridge, Riverside Drive, and 161 every day to get to their assigned school or enrolled campus. Traffic safety is a universal issue regardless of what a sheriff in Shawnee Hill writes on letterhead. If you'd like me to obtain a self-serving letter from a publicly elected official about the safety hazards of crossing Hayden Run Bridge or navigating the 161 roundabout, I'd be happy to do so. But let's stop using selective excuses and do what the community asks of you to do. Last fall, this process was paused because a clear, transparent, and defined process was not followed by Dr. Marshausen. District residents and board members were kept in the dark, and that misstep has created a continued sense of distrust. I urge the board to ensure direct oversight of Dr. Marshausen when communicating with Wolpert. Discussion should be had in the presence of a rotating board member with regular scheduled status meetings. The community asked for more transparency, and now the board must protect the integrity of the process. Thank you.
Anna Garver.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Anna Garver, a Jerome Village resident and parent. Thank you for your continued and dedicated service as you navigate our district's rapid growth. I want to clearly state this is not about one school community being better than another. Dublin-Scioto is an excellent school, and we are all proud to be one Dublin. Our concern tonight is purely structural, specifically the resolution regarding boundary criteria you are voting on this evening. Under the first operational directive of this resolution, the goal of balancing enrollment has been grouped together with a mandate to minimize the impact by moving as few students as possible. We all want to minimize disruption, but using the fewest students moved as a main rule creates a serious flaw. A simple head count numbers game shouldn't override the core pillars of your own policy, which are safety, proximity, and sensible travel routes. According to the district's own Woolpert enrollment report, Jerome Village is an unfolding growth engine. Moving an actively developing population to a fixed capacity school miles away is mathematically unsustainable. Your own community-wide survey data proved proximity and long-term stability are a priority for Dublin families. By using a headcount loophole to target a high growth zone and send it to the furthest geographic facility, you guarantee that capacity boundaries will fail again in a few years, forcing a repeated, highly disruptive redistricting cycle on the exact same children. We also cannot ignore physical safety. The recent bus accident on Riverside Drive underscores the formal warnings issued by local law enforcement. The narrow lanes and blind curves of Glick and Riverside are hazardous for high-volume student transit. Prioritizing a headcount spreadsheet over these documented road hazards directly violates policy 5120B. The board has two paths tonight. You can adopt a resolution that isolates a growth pocket by overweighting a headcount metric, or you can require proximity-based planning, the national best practice that updates boundaries logically in mature neighborhoods where numbers are stable and commutes are safe. I urge the board to rely on your long-term data and physical student safety rather than reacting to the friction or backlash of previous map proposals. Please refine this resolution to ensure that simple headcount balancing does not compromise the safety and stability of our children. Thank you.
Colin Filato.
Good evening. My name is Colin Filato. I am a parent of 3 Dublin City School students, 1 in elementary, 1 in middle, and 1 in high school. My family and our neighbors have been redistricted before. We were not excited about it, but we accepted it because Policy 5120 led the process and applied to everyone equally. That is the standard I'm asking you to hold tonight. The revised resolution takes some steps forward. The growth window, the undeveloped land, the feeder pattern language are improvements, but the structural problem in Criterion A remains, and I want to name it precisely. I understand why minimize the impact by reassigning as few students as possible is in this resolution. It reflects something real about how this community feels. Nobody wants to be redistricted. That feeling belongs in this process, and I respect that the board put it there in response to genuine community concern. But here's the policy problem. Reassigning a few students as possible is not a criterion under 5120. It's an objective, and those are two things. A criterion is a standard you use to evaluate options, safety, proximity, efficiency, instructional effectiveness. Those are the factors the policy enumerates. An objective is a target outcome you optimize towards. When you write an objective into your top priority criterion, you pre-decide the answer before GIS firms draw a single line. You're not letting criteria produce the map, you are setting a preferred outcome. The flexibility language added so the map maker can consider all areas was the right instinct, but flexibility to look everywhere doesn't fix the underlying problem. Minimizing the impact still sits above safety and proximity as the governing constraint. The map maker can look anywhere, but the objective still scores the opinions. Enrollment balance is the reason we're here. Safety and proximity are the rules by which we get there. At the board's own February 9th facilitated session, board members independently interpreted each factor. Minimizing disruption was recorded under factor F, other relevant factors, not under enrollment and capacity. And the meeting minutes note on the record that minimizing disruption may conflict with enrollment balance, and that was identified as a concern. The board's own process already separated these two things. Unlike safety, proximity, and instructional effectiveness, which directly affect children's education, minimizing the number moved is about managing public pressure, not serving students. Policy 5120 sets the standard, the best interests of the students. So my ask is narrow. Remove or reframe the minimize the impact by reassigning as few students as possible language in criterion A. It should be considered, but it should not direct the process. A transparent process that codifies the wrong priorities is still a flawed process. Let the policy lead. We've accepted it before, and we will again if the policy leads. Thank you.
Jessica Souter.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jessica Sauter, and I'm a proud parent at Dublin-Scioto High School. When my husband Jim and I were deciding where we wanted to raise our family, we researched carefully. We knew we wanted a community where our children could thrive not just academically, but socially, emotionally, and culturally. That search led us here. From Old Sawmill Elementary School to Davis Middle School to Dublin-Scioto High School, this community has embraced our family, and we have embraced it right back. Many of our Scioto feeder school neighborhoods are spread very far apart and aren't exactly bike over and hang out after school distance kind of schools, but yet somehow our kids have made the bonds that are incredibly strong today. Just this Tuesday, we organized a clap out for the Scioto graduating class of 2026 at Old Sawmill, as several of our feeder schools are doing this week to celebrate our graduates. It hadn't been done there in years, and due to scheduling conflicts, we had to change the date 3 times. As you can imagine, by the third reschedule and the 8:30 start time, I was not hopeful that any of our seniors would show. However, the turnout was incredible. The students came, the families came, the teachers came. The little OSC library was packed with laughter, excitement, energy, and most importantly, pride. Standing in that library and knowing I was coming to this meeting tonight, I could not stop thinking, how in the world could anyone think less of this group or the high school that they are here representing? These are phenomenal students, kind, intelligent, resilient, hardworking, funny, and creative young adults who have been raised by an amazing community, many of them who spent the larger portion of their high school career alongside their peers from Coffin and Jerome at Emerald Campus. And yet, despite sharing many of these same opportunities and experience, much of the rhetoric we've heard this year suggested Scioto students are less than, and that could not be further from the truth. I've had the privilege of serving this community in many capacities over the years, primarily through our PTOs and supporting my husband Jim and his many endeavors with youth sports. But honestly, nothing made me more proud than serving as a receptionist at Scioto these past 2 years. Each and every day, I witnessed our educators, specialists, secretaries, custodians, transportation staff, support staff, many of whom we share across all 3 high schools. I'm not sure if everyone knows that, but working tirelessly towards one common goal, and that's giving our students every possible tool to go out and make this world a better place. I saw students discovering their strengths, pursuing their goals, and being supported by educators and families who believe in them, exactly what you would hope to see in a Dublin City school. During the first round of this redistricting process, you heard concerns from families in every nook and cranny, and while the packaging might look a little bit different now, the concerns haven't changed whatsoever. Redistricting is hard. No one disputes that. We've been through that with our elementary schools. But when neighborhoods are arguing, protests are forming, and attorneys are hired, it's a pretty clear sign we are far from where we should be. So my ask of the board is this: please be transparent. Please hear our concerns, and please get this right this time. This is your one opportunity to make one Dublin actually mean something in this community. Thank you.
Ashley Benton.
Hi there. I want to focus on two issues tonight. First, there's no statistically significant evidence that minimizing the number of students moved should be treated as an overarching requirement in this redistricting process. It's not in the board policy. To add an overarching priority of moving the least amount of kids so direct Jerome to Scioto completely ignores the nuance of proximity. This is incorrectly analyzing data and ignoring data you have available, and instead pushing the hidden agenda of redistricting with the diversity category we had in the fall. The Planning Next survey gave respondents only two options, domino effect or impact the least amount of students, and we clarified that that was not a statistically significant survey. But you're still going with impact the least amount of students. Are you going to include the students who have been impacted 4 times in the last 10 years? The Bailey area has. The Fallon Parent Survey is also important because it ranked proximity above moving the least amount of students. That is statistically significant. So if we're truly following the available data, you need to focus on proximity. So my concern is simple. If we move the fewest students, it is treated as a dominant lens to which every map is judged, and then the district is no longer balancing criteria. It is pre-deciding the answer you want to balance diversity and social economics at Scioto and working backwards to get to your goal. This means you are protecting Kaufman students, for example, who actually drive time is closer to Scioto based on the transportation study that live east of the river, and then sending Jerome kids completely out of their way to the furthest school under the guise of move the least amount of students. And I can't find any data to support that. And I love data. Moving the least amount of kids is pushing social economics, and the community was clear not to prioritize that. My second issue is safety. There was a horrible head-on collision on Riverside Drive this week, and the safest driver is no driver. Protecting students means preserving non-personal transportation options like walking, biking, and COTA busing wherever possible. If a student can walk or bike to school today, they should continue to have that option. President Messick has said it's impossible to create metrics of safe biking because each family may define safe differently. But that's no different than any metric for safe walking or driving. Families always have the ability to make the right decisions for their family unless you take away that option. The district should encourage utilization of this community asset so the students can get to school and, most importantly, extracurricular activities safely. They go there a lot in the summer. Please keep biking in the criteria as you push the draft forward. Also understand that SELS is 100% busing schools, as Dublin dictates that no student can bike across 161. With that logic, only students north of Kaufman can bike. North of Kaufman has multiple underground tunnels, so there are no major road crossings. If you do share the transportation study from 2025, it did not include Bailey area tunnels, and that needs to be corrected before it's shared. There are no major road crossings from North Kaufman for bikers. If the board wants to be data-driven, which I love, then it should include proximity and not impact the least amount of students. I'm happy you're at least including middle schools. That was a great add, so you don't keep impacting the same students. We want to go with conclusive evidence and data, and please make sure you keep those bikers safe so we can keep biking to our activities in the summer. Thank you.
That concludes public participation. We are now to board committees, and before we get into the resolution, is there any other committee updates? No? Okay. Then, do we want to do the student representative update prior to this? No worries. Okay.
Mrs. Messick.
Yes.
I do have some things that I want to share before we get into considering the resolution. I don't know if you want to do that now or if you want to do that as part of the report.
I think what we're going to do is we're going to do the approval and then the discussion.
Okay.
So I am moving to adopt the resolution regarding the boundary criteria as of 5/21/26, the copy of 5/21/26. Do I have a second?
Second.
Now we're going to have a discussion over that criteria.
Okay. Before we get into that, I just want to share a few things, if I may. I might be speaking for a while, so I apologize in advance, but it is all relevant. So good evening, everyone. First, I must say that I can only speak for myself and not on behalf of other board members, the Board of Education, or the district. Before we dive into considering the board resolution, I want to take a moment to level set, catch everyone up, and get on the same page by discussing where we are today, how we got here, the purpose of the resolution that we are considering today, and hopefully clear up some misinformation and misconceptions and give an overview of some of the changes that were made to the resolution since the last meeting so that we can move forward in a productive manner. But before I do that, I want to take a brief moment to acknowledge some of the emotions in the room today. There is uncertainty, there is fear, and there is anger. And when faced with unanticipated change, a perceived lack of control over a situation or uncertainty, it is a common human response to feel fear and anxiety, especially if that change is viewed as a threat. An immediate human survival response to fear is anger, and two common ways, among others, that people deal with fear-generated anger is to go into fight mode or fix mode. And I believe this is where many of us are today. And unfortunately, and I'm going to show how much of a geek I am, but as Yoda says, fear leads to anger, and anger leads to hate. And that is not the type of environment that builds toward common good. So I invite all of us to move from a place of fear and anger and into a place of calm, level-headed thinking, and to be curious, not furious. I also want to acknowledge the concerns of the community. Everyone is concerned about the impact that redistricting may have. Some are worried about travel safety. Some are worried about academic outcomes and opportunities. Some are worried about being able to get kids to and from extracurricular activities. Some are worried about preserving the ability to walk or bike. Some are worried about repeated disruptions. Some are worried about being separated from the school community and their neighborhood has always enjoyed. Some are worried that nearly all the economically disadvantaged students will be placed in one building. Some are worried that students might be split from friend groups or sent to a new school where they won't know anyone. Some are worried about being sent to the furthest school from their residence. Some are worried that projections might be off. Some are worried that board members are biased. Some are worried that the superintendent will go rogue. Some are worried that the resolution will cement only one outcome, and it's the outcome that moves their neighborhood. I could add more, but for the sake of time, I will stop here. I recognize that each of these concerns are important to members of our community. I've not been able to get out and talk with people face-to-face in the community as much as I would like recently, which I prefer to do, even when you all are irate. But I want you to know that you are being heard. While it's not humanly possible to respond to all of the emails the board is receiving, I do read them all, and I think it is important as a board member to acknowledge that you are being heard, no matter what your point of view is. So why are we here, and how did we get here? So this will be an abbreviated overview, but I think it's important that people know how this decision was made and that the board didn't preemptively add on to SIOTA as a short-term fix. So in the fall of 2015, the Board of Education Master Planning Committee began developing a comprehensive plan to address projected enrollment growth. The goal was to present a recommendation to the board by May 2016. To manage the growth in the interim, the district implemented K-8 redistricting, added classrooms to existing schools, installed modulars at Jerome, Deer Run, and Eli Penny. The steps provided short-term relief while the district prepared to implement a larger master plan. Following several public input meetings in March 2016 and a recommendation from the Master Planning Committee, the board in April of 2016 implemented a plan which included the construction of elementary 13 and 14, which are now Hopewell and Depp, middle school 5, which is Eversole Run, and purchased this building, Emerald Campus, with plans to add additions to Jerome and Scioto High Schools. In 2017, the district finalized the purchase of Emerald Campus and focused on the 2018 operating levy and bond issue that would support both the new construction and staffing needed for a growing student population. Voters approved Issue 5 in November 28, enabling the district to move into the next phase of implementation. When additions at Jerome and Scioto High Schools remain part of the master master plan. Their timelines were deferred as the district prioritized elementary and middle school construction, with those projects expected to follow the opening of Middle School 5 in 2021. Originally, the master plan called for additions at both Jerome and Scioto High School. However, in 2021, given the rising cost and immediate capacity needs, the district recommended focusing on a larger addition at Jerome High School. The 60,000 square foot addition was completed on Jerome. Additionally, the 2023 bond issue allowed sufficient funding to build the addition on Scioto. In 2024, the district explored building a fourth high school, converting the Cardinal Health building into that fourth high school, or adding an addition to Scioto. When evaluating specific options, the two paths emerged as the most viable: converting the Cardinal Health site into a fourth high school or adding on to Scioto High School to maintain 3 larger balanced high schools. Both options would require redistricting. However, adding on to Scioto was generally viewed as the most cost-effective approach, while requiring little to no additional levy compared to building a new high school. As the year progressed, zoning challenges began to impact the feasibility of the Cardinal Health option. In response, the district took a closer look at the addition at Scioto High School, an option already outlined in the master plan as a more practical and achievable path forward. District leadership reaffirmed its commitment to establishing the 3 balanced high schools and broke ground on the addition of Scioto High School in May of 2025. The redistricting process was started and paused in 2025, resuming in 2026. So let's talk a little bit about reasons why balancing the high school is important. Why is being over capacity a bad thing? So students receive less personal attention, and that is particularly bad for students who may be struggling. There's increased facility wear and tear and congestion, especially in common areas like bathrooms, hallways, and cafeterias. Overcrowding leads to inadequate learning environments, such as modular classrooms, as well as students taking classes in spaces outside of normal instruction, like taking classes in the hallway or the media center. For these reasons, having a school that is over capacity also complicates safety, making it more difficult to handle various emergency situations that could arise. While students may have more class section opportunities, they may have more competition for athletics or other extracurricular activities. And why is being underutilized also not ideal? So underutilization causes less opportunity for students to take classes because there are less class sections offered based on the number of students enrolled. It also causes an imbalance in clubs and extracurriculars that can be offered if student numbers are too low. In addition, it inflates the cost per student operating cost. The district has a duty to make sure students have equal opportunities to participate in educational programs and activities, no matter which building they attend. So here we are. Following the redistricting process last fall, the superintendent asked the board to pass a resolution outlining and clarifying the redistricting criteria prior to the superintendent drawing new boundaries. What is the purpose of the resolution? Whereas the superintendent asked for additional guidance from the board, the purpose of the boundary resolution is to provide additional guidance to the superintendent and outline the boundary criteria and considerations. This information will be given to the GIS firm to create a map for high school and possibly middle school boundaries. The purpose is not to draw a map ahead of time or constrain the GIS firm. The purpose is not to replace or amend Policy 5120 with this resolution. This resolution does not, in its present form, suspend Policy 5120. This resolution does not remove the responsibility of redistricting from the superintendent. The board does not have a redistricting proposal or maps. This resolution is a board resolution, not the resolution of 1 or 2 board members. The draft resolution is a working document and tool for the board to work from as a whole. When policies or resolutions are presented to the board, it is commonly understood that board members are free to share their opinions on what they think should be changed, altered, added, or deleted. When proposed board policies leave the Policy Review Committee, they are commonly understood to be drafts considered by the entire board, not items that are pushed through by 2 board members. This resolution is no different. There are no De Silva Valentine policies, even though we sit on the Policy Committee, just as there are no Messick De Silva boundary criteria resolutions. Drafting this resolution followed a similar process in that we had legal counsel present to help draft the resolution. I explained this process to some community members prior to working on the draft resolution, but I think it's worth sharing here. I want to talk a little bit about board governance and oversight. So the main function of the Board of Education is governance and oversight. The board does not handle day-to-day activities, but rather focuses on higher macro-level concerns. This includes things like creating policies, approving budgets, hiring and evaluating the superintendent and treasurer, and ensuring accountability. The board is tasked with listening to the community while considering what best serves the district overall, focusing on the best interests of the students and district resources. The board does not presently vote on maps. According to Board Policy 5120 in Ohio Revised Code, the superintendent assigns students to buildings. The board relies on the superintendent to make boundary assignments that are in alignment with board policy, keeping in mind the best interest of students and the best use of the resources of this district. Again, every board member has and will have an opportunity to put forth their ideas for shaping this resolution. Lastly, I think I will share a little bit about the board's code of ethics. I think it's always important, but I just want to highlight a few sections. So, number 1, the first thing that I want to highlight is that we are called to remember that our first and greatest concern must be the educational welfare of all students attending public schools, to render all decisions based on available facts and our independent judgment rather than succumbing to the influence of individuals or special interest groups, express my opinions, but once the board has acted, accept the will of the majority. And now I want to clear up some misinformation. So the board has no map or preferred proposal. The only way to get to a preferred map or proposal would be to vote on it in an open meeting, which we have not done. If you ask each board member what they think the map should look like, I would expect you would get 5 different answers. We have not and are not voting on maps unless 5120 is suspended. The board did not create or choose the participants of the focus groups. The board participated in a retreat to generate ideas for possible criteria to be tested. Not all of those ideas moved forward to be tested with the focus groups. Criteria that did not move forward, including socioeconomics, are not reflected in the draft resolution. The board did not write the questions for the focus groups, the Fallon poll, or the community survey. In fact, the first time that I even heard the questions, it was from a Jerome parent that called me and told me what they were. So we did not have any hand in writing those. The questions for the focus groups. The Fallon survey was also not given to the board members ahead of time. Dr. Marshausen did share a draft of the community survey questions with Mrs. Messick and me prior to agenda review, and we both conveyed that we would like the questions to not essentially have people voting on moving one school or not. The draft resolution was created with legal counsel and considered data straight from the work of Fallon and Planning Next. It is important to recognize the limitations of each of these tools used and work together to gather the underlying sentiments and values. And I just want to talk a little bit real quickly about resolution edits, because there were some changes that were made. So Section A, edits in this section were made to reflect changes that seemed to have support during the last board meeting, as well as changes to clarify the primary objective. that the primary objective is balanced enrollment with respect to student count among the 3 high schools, taking into account potential growth, including growth on undeveloped land over the next 5 to 10 years. A sentence was added to clarify that the superintendent is to take into account all other factors in this resolution. It should be noted that the order the considerations are listed in does not correspond to weight or importance. We simply followed the structure of Policy 5120. I think there should be discussion of how minimizing the impact came to be included. On March 23rd, Mr. Fallon shared the results of the Fallon poll with the board. In regards to the parent study and attendance boundaries, the question was asked, as district leaders are making decisions about future attendance boundaries for assigning students to high schools, which should be the more important factor in deciding about how students will be affected? The district should strive to spread out the impact of school assignment more evenly, or the district should strive to minimize impact by reassigning as few students as possible, or unsure. According to the Fallon poll, 54%, actually he said this to himself, this is a direct quote, 54%, a statistical majority, said the district should strive to minimize the impact by reassigning as few students as possible. He went on to say, I want to note that there were big differences by county. 58% in Delaware County said strive to minimize impact compared to 48% in Franklin County, which is a plurality and not a majority. And in Union County, a whopping 72% seemingly bristled at the notion of impact and preferred the district to minimize it. Mr. Fallon also went on to say, in regards to the forced battery question that prioritized the criteria, that none garnered a majority, but at 32%, the community clearly wanted a long-term view. So we added in the preference for planning for future growth, while also recognizing that many in the community want the district to strive for minimizing the impact in this process. We thought this was fair. I also want to note that in Planning Next focus group, 81% chose account for future growth, which they described as meaning using higher range projections and the furthest year projected. They also said Jerome would operate at lower enrollment initially to accommodate future growth, affect more students now, and minimize the need for future redistricting. So I believe that this might be even a bigger impact at Jerome, and I know people are sound like they are now opposite that. So we know that the Northwest has safety concerns, but it seems like a little bit of a conflicted area on this topic. Part of the challenge here is that it appears we're being given different feedback based on the scenario that is trying to be avoided. And as board members, we are trying to be fair, objective, and do what works for their district and students as a whole. Section B, no changes were made to this section, but I think it's worth reiterating that this section reflects listening to community concerns, not ignoring them. The district has a duty to consider safety, and it will be considered. We are asking the superintendent to take a step further. I also think it is important to note that we have students traveling on all of the very roads that the community is concerned about. If they are not safe for young drivers, I think it is incumbent on all of us as community members to work towards making the roads safer for our kids. I hope regardless of what the map ends up being, that everyone continues to advocate for safety. Again, the order does not signify importance. Section C, the words "in considering proximity" were added here to clarify that proximity is what is being considered here. People are asking us to prioritize proximity. It is being prioritized, which is why it is included in the resolution. We know travel time is important, and it is included here. Mileage was included as a consideration if it was helpful in cases where other things are equal. We added a statement in D to clarify that sophomores, juniors, and seniors should be given the option to remain in their current high school or go to their newly assigned high school. E and F had no changes. In the third paragraph of page 3, keeping the splits as equitable as possible was added per board discussion at the last meeting. And lastly, the criteria are not weighted or were not weighted so that each factor could be optimized. So that's all that I have for now.
Thank you. At this time, what we'll do is we'll go section by section. If there's any changes that anybody would like to make, please make a motion to do so. So on the first page and through all the whereases, is there any changes that anybody would like to make? If so, please make a motion now.
I would like to move. Are we going to discuss these first, actually?
Move, second, then discuss.
Okay. So I think I would like to make a motion to strike the last sentence in section A, which is
Where are we right now?
including.
I'm sorry.
It would be easier to
Mrs.
talk
De
about it in
Silva, I'm not quite to A yet.
Okay.
So I'm on page 1 and going through the whereases before we get to the
Okay,
main.
you're
bulk
on
of
where-
it.
whereas.
Yeah, I'm just seeing if there's any changes that need to be made on page 1 and the rest of the whereases. Do I have any changes, any motions for those areas? Okay, thank you. Now on to section A. Is there any motions to change?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to strike the last sentence in section A, which reads, including any middle school students who may need to be redistricted, and add a period after possible. I think we should strike that last sentence because I think it contradicts the community's desire to redistrict middle school boundaries to make high school feeder patterns work.
Okay, let me see if I have a second on that motion. Mrs. De Silva has put a motion on the floor to strike the last sentence, including any middle school students who may need to be redistricted. Do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
It has been seconded by Ms. Seward. Now discussion.
Okay. So I think we should strike that because I think it's in conflict with the community's desire to redistrict middle school boundaries to make high school feeder patterns work. In the Planning Next focus groups, 83% of participants said to make changes to create better flow for high school versus 17% saying keep feeder patterns the same. And participants also chose planning for future growth, 52%, versus 29% keeping feeder patterns the same. And when asked to prioritize in the forced battery question, in the Fallon survey, only 8% said keep feeder patterns the same.
This isn't an either-or type situation. You could have feeder patterns being important, but people could still want data and account on the number of kids moved. Who decided that it shouldn't be included on the surveys in terms of that being the sole way we evaluate whether or not middle school students should be counted in the overall student total? I understand the feeder pattern component, but there was nothing in there. So who's deciding that?
What do you mean? Who's deciding
Deciding
what?
whether or not it's important or not, whether or not middle school students should be counted. It's one thing for them to make the comment or elect how they decided in terms of the importance of middle school feeder patterns and the percentage it showed, but no one ever said that the actual total movement of students shouldn't be counted.
Yeah, I'm not saying it shouldn't be counted either.
You're asking for it to be removed.
Yes, I'm asking that it be removed to minimize, to put in there minimizing middle school students. Because what does that mean? We haven't defined what that means.
It means, as we look at the totality of the number of kids.
Are we saying that it is constricting the ability to move the middle school
No, but it's
lines?
something
That's what I'm concerned about, is if it's not constricting the middle school lines and the ability to redraw those boundaries to make it work, then I'm fine with keeping it in. If it is in there to restrict the ability.
But who's deciding if it's restricting?
We are, aren't we?
That's
we?
exactly my point. That's
Yeah,
exactly my point. You're deciding it's restricted.
It was your ad in there. So what was your motivation to?
That if we're going to move students, that the totality of what we are doing here should be counted for. And I've said this going back into when we had these original discussions in the fall. We need to look at the total picture of what we are doing, because there are going to be ripple effects with the decisions that are made at the high school level. And I think to ignore the total number of students potentially moved is negligent on our part.
So the way that I was looking at the process is that
Please, we need to be able to hear each other.
We are creating the high school boundaries independent of the middle school boundaries in some sense, and that we are trying to get the high school boundaries correct. And then if we need to move the middle school boundaries, then we move the middle school boundaries. That's how I'm interpreting it.
Yeah, I think this is important discussion that I think needs to be had, so I'm glad that we're having it. Do you feel, I guess, Tiffany, that's a question maybe for you, do you feel that there is something in the resolution that talks about total already, the total number of students moved?
I feel like minimizing students, period, the impact on students is already addressing that. So are we also saying that we can't move high school because we don't want to move middle schools? If we're saying we can't draw high school boundaries based on the number of middle school students, then that contradicts what we were trying to do and what the community said they were willing to change. Does that make sense?
I disagree with it.
Okay.
I think it's restrictive. I think that we allow the map maker to take into account all students who are being moved, so that we know on the full scale of the decision being made how many students are being moved. And he can take into account, or she can take into account, whoever the person is behind the curtain here, everything that is going on in the district when we make these changes.
So what clarifying language do you, because I feel like.
I think it's good to include any middle, I even said that I thought elementary school students, because I'm not sure, depending upon how the rest of this is structured, that elementary kids won't get impacted. So
from what I have heard, this is not in any way, shape, or form, looking at the proposal, elementary is not being, their lines aren't being drawn as a part of this process.
I would hope not, but yeah. I don't know as well as anybody sitting here that how this thing's going to turn out. Dr. Marshausen, do you believe this is in line with 5120, or is it above and beyond the current policy?
I think it depends what the board's intent is when it says minimize impact. If minimize impact supersedes travel time, proximity, safety, travel concerns, if that supersedes those, then it is adding a criteria and a layer to board policy 5120. If it is, please take that into consideration, consider all of the sections of 5120, keeping in mind the goal is to move as few students as possible. If it's not restricting on how a map maker can create the new attendance boundaries, if it's not a restricting criteria, then I do not believe it changes the intent of the policy. Is it aspirational, or is it a directive from the board? And that's what I would ask each of the 5 of you. Before we're done, I'm going to ask Mrs. McLean, is it restrictive? Are you saying move 600 students from Jerome to Scioto and then apply the other criteria? Or are you saying, look at all of the criteria, keeping in mind we'd like to move as few students as possible? Those, Mr. Valentine, in my mind, that is what I need as the superintendent in direction from this board before I'm able to have the conversations that are required with the map maker. And that's what I would ask the 5 of you to make clear.
Which is why we put in that new language and we added a period, split up that sentence, and put in, while taking into account all other factors in this resolution, the superintendent should.
So to be crystal clear on that, are we saying, as the 2 of you who have been taking charge in leadership, as you guys should, are we saying move 600 students, then apply the policy, or apply the policy and then use common sense not to move kids who shouldn't be moved?
I think it's the closer to the latter, but I would say it the way Dr. Marshausen did, where we're applying all of the criteria, but we don't want to move 2,000 kids because one building is overcrowded by 600 and another building needs 600. That is not something that should be done. So it is looking at all the factors, and we put that in there because people were assuming that just because it was A, it was the top, it was more important. It is not. That's why we said you have to look at B, C, D, E, and F. So it's using them in combination.
Yeah, I think there's some confusion around. There were multiple questions asked in the survey. There are some questions that had just a basic, do you want to impact more students or not? And then there was other questions where, do you want to impact the least amount of students by moving from the growth area specifically to areas where there's capacity? And the data that we took, where we took the data from was from the basic value question. Do you want to impact more students or spread it around? And actually, the way that they are worded in the either or question that we took the data from, both of them seemed like they were saying the same thing, honestly. But yeah, I don't think there's any specifiers in this saying that it has to come from any specific one place.
Okay, I'm going to come back and ask the same question again because I still don't have clarity around this. Are we saying move 600 students and then apply the policy? Or are we saying apply the policy and then
apply the policy? You always apply the policy.
And
yeah.
Let me please finish it. Apply the policy and then use common sense not to move kids. If we are pigeonholing it back to the Jerome North 600, what we talked about last time, then it's option A. If it's option B, it's a much different discussion. And I'm trying to gain clarity around that.
So I want to get back to who is saying that we're moving Jerome. I think there's...
When you minimize movement.
Yes.
All along the discussion has been if you minimize movement, the easiest way to minimize movement with high school kids in particular is you go from the north where the high growth is, you put them into Scioto. I'm seeking clarity around the fact that the directions given to Dr. Marshausen and the map maker are allowing, and I've got language that I'm going to end up presenting as well, are allowing them to look at the total district as they make this decision. And I just want that to be crystal clear in our instructions to him. And I want to be crystal clear as he has conversations with the map maker. If it isn't that, then we need to clearly communicate that.
Again, I can only speak for myself, the way that I am interpreting this, and then the way that when I put this here, my interpretation was that you look at the policy and you build the best map possible, considering all of these things, not moving one specific area.
Okay.
Is that how you take it, Dr. Marchhausen? When you read that, I guess that's the important piece.
That's why I want to ask each of you, how do you interpret it? Because as the elected officials,
I mean, do you need more clarity here? As it stands right here in the language, like, are you confused on the priority here? Right? Even with while taking into account all other factors in this resolution, are you still uncertain?
what I need for clarity is, Mrs. Seward, do you agree that that means we apply all of the criteria equally and then do it in a way that moves the least number of students? I will go around when you are done with this and ask each of you individually, do you agree with that? On the record, that's what this means. Because I need each of you, and I'll be able to count to 3, to have the board majority tell me what that means. So I'm going to ask each of you that when we're done, because I need to know before I sit down with potentially Wolpert to have the conversation about how are we doing this process. If no one believes that this means no Kaufman students will be moved, if none of the 5 of you say, in order to achieve this goal, it's 600 Jerome students directly to Scioto, then I think the statement about middle school students is irrelevant. Because if this is not restricting, then it's just move the fewest number of kids move the fewest number of kids to achieve our goals. The goals are outlined in Board Policy 5120. If that's what the 5 of you direct me to do, then I don't think we need to spend a lot of time talking about is it middle school or not, because it's not restrictive.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
No, if you've got more to discuss,
Oh, the motion, yes. Okay, good.
is there any more discussion on the motion to strike the last sentence? If there's no more discussion on that, I'd like to take a vote.
And there's
Please.
a period after possible, remember, too. Correct?
Yes, and we would add a period after possible. So then
Anything after the comma would be strucken.
anything after the comma would be stricken. Stricken?
Sorry.
Stricken?
I'm a math guy, I'm not an English
So-
guy, so.
Social studies teacher, I don't know. All right, so do you want me to read that last sentence as it would be then? It would say, while taking into account all other factors in this resolution, the superintendent should minimize the impact by reassigning as few students as possible, period. Please call the roll.
Mrs. De Silva,
Yes.
Ms. Seward,
Yes.
Mrs. McLean,
Yes.
Mr. Valentine,
No.
and Mrs. Messick.
Yes. Motion passes 4-1.
I'm going to
Anything else for A?
Yep, I'm going to jump in on the sentence that says, while taking into account future growth, or while taking into account potential growth, excuse me, including growth on undeveloped land over the next 5 to 10 years. For the sake of clarity, I would motion that we also add in all parts of the district, period.
There is a motion on the floor from Mr. Valentine to, after including growth on undeveloped land, can you say that one more time for me?
Yep, absolutely. I'll pick up from the beginning of the sentence. The priority objective is balanced enrollment with respect to student count among the 3 high schools, taking into account potential growth, including growth on undeveloped land over the next 5 to 10 years in all parts of the district.
In all parts of the district. Motion on the floor to add to the end of that sentence after 10 years to say in all parts of the district. Do I have a second?
I'll second that. I don't have a problem with that.
This is discussion, right?
So it's
Yes,
been seconded
discussion.
by
Yeah.
Mrs. De Silva. Now it's up to discussion.
Go ahead,
For
Terry.
me, I think that's what my intent was when I talked about undeveloped land. I think it's not just one area that you're looking at. I don't even know what necessarily that would look like, and I think that's not our job to know exactly what parts that is. I mean, obviously, we know where the growth is coming from, but there could be undeveloped land across the district, right? I think that.
Personally, I find it redundant, but that's
Yeah,
me.
I mean, that was my intent, but if there's some clarity needed, then,
Yeah, I think that you might have, and I don't want to speak for you or, but I think that I didn't add the including growth on my own or undeveloped land, but just in my mind, it automatically includes, when you say that it would make sense that they would just, that's implied in this sentence. But if you were coming at it thinking that you're only moving from one area, I could see why you would want to add that.
Yeah, it's consequential based off of how other parts of item A are written or approved. So that's why I wanted clarity around it.
I guess I'm just trying to figure out why you feel it's necessary to add it in when the map maker, we live in here, and so we know where some undeveloped land is, but I think it's real, and we know where the growth is, but I think it's, the map maker doesn't live within this fishbowl, and so undeveloped land is undeveloped land. I mean, if you want it to be redundant, I'm fine with it, but I just don't understand.
It's a point of clarity.
Fine. Do we have any more discussion on it?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Just, this is more for Dr. Marshausen. I mean, they have, I asked this the last time, but they automatically look at, when they do their analysis, they'll look at the growth across the district, I would assume, and the undeveloped land.
Well, Wolpert has done our housing studies and our enrollment projections for this last several cycles. I think there has been an undertone in the conversation that the undeveloped land was limited to Union and Delaware County. I think by saying this in my conversations with a map-making firm, I would also ensure that they were taking into account the City of Columbus and Mayor Ginther's 100% 15-year tax abatement on the Sawmill corridor. And I would just mention that that is undeveloped residential land at this point. And I don't know how a professional firm would take that into account. But I think by saying in all parts of the district, if you're having conversations about all parts of the district, there are clearly parts of our district that are built out and not going to change. If you look at central Dublin, it's not going to get, we're looking at graying out of houses, not building new homes. I think when we're currently looking at parts of Delaware and Union County, there's clearly green space that could still be turned into housing. When you look up and down Highland Croy, there could be additions to some of the apartments on Highland Croy there and Jerome Grand. And I also think we would take into account the potential of what happened to Anderson's and what happened to the athletic club at Sawmill as part of that development plan for the city of Columbus and part of Mayor Ginther's planning.
I just have a question, actually, just related to the undeveloped land piece. And Dr. Marchesen, this might be a question for you. When we're looking at, and I think it was mentioned in public participation, if you have a school, and maybe this is something you do with like the elementary and middle schools as well, that's at capacity, right? You know that that's at capacity. You've had these projections that are showing that it's at capacity. And now we have this undeveloped land that's happening in certain areas. If it's in an area where you have a school that's already at capacity, and they kind of echoed what I was thinking, and you don't have open enrollment that you can even get into that building, how then do you say people that are now going to build then can come into that school, but you can't come into that school when you live here currently?
This is largely an issue over the past several years at our elementary buildings, where when we reach those building capacities, and it's why we ask you as a board to approve a building capacity resolution each March, and we try to keep our buildings going into the summer month at a maximum of 85% capacity, taking into account the growth that's coming in the next year. We also know that in our buildings, we can exceed capacity when necessary, but it does limit what we're able to do in terms of space for special programs. You end up with your specials on a cart and your related arts on a cart. You end up using this stage as classroom space. In the case of Depp Elementary, we had 12 modular classrooms there. We built Bishop Elementary. We're already filled back up at Depp Elementary because of the pace of growth that's happening in that area. You know, one of the questions that we get often is, why does Olentangy seem to be able to do this better than we do it at Dublin? They just do it more. I think when you look at our neighbors to the north, they are frequently moving elementary boundaries and middle school boundaries depending on where growth is. I think in a rapidly growing community is unrealistic to think that school boundaries at elementary level could be consistent over prolonged periods of time, just not knowing where and how that growth is going to come. High schools give you a lot more flexibility. High schools give you the ability to flex students to some extent. We have this building that houses 1,800 students a day. When we're looking at high school capacity, you're looking at a building that may have a capacity of 2,000 students, but there are very few times in the day that all 2,000 students are there due to internships, externships, CCP coming here. So I think it is fair to say we can project high schools better than we can elementary and middle because of the flexibility of scheduling, because of the flexibility of a teacher who teaches 6 periods a day. Somebody could be in their classroom the period that they have prep. We have more flexibility at the high school level. But we do have to move things around. At some point, we're going to have to shift elementary students around again because of the growth in the Northwest. And we just know that's going to happen at some point. And it's the reality of living in a community where growth is happening and the locations of buildings is fixed.
Is there any more discussion on this motion? Okay, so going to take a roll call vote. Do you want me to restate what it is? Okay. I'm going to read the full sentence. The priority objective is balanced enrollment with respect to student count among the 3 high schools, taking into account potential growth, including growth on undeveloped land over the next 5 to 10 years in all parts of the district, period. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ballantyne?
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva?
No.
Mrs. McLean?
No.
Ms. Seward?
Yes.
And Mrs. Messick?
No. Motion fails. 2-3. Anything else for A?
Before we move on with that, just so, again, I want to make this crystal clear, and I think it comes back to the question that Dr. Marshausen was going to ask. The directive to him is follow 5120 and then minimize the number of students that are moved. Is that correct? Is that what we were telling him? Tiffany's nodding yes.
If we can just go around and, that's what you were going to ask us, if we could just do that now to get that out of the way, I think that's good. Maybe start over there.
I mean, yeah, I definitely think 5120 needs to be the leader. I've got thoughts on the minimizing, but I don't think minimizing and then 5120 is the process to follow.
Yes, I'm not telling you to move 600 and then do this. I want the best possible map, considering everything.
I am the same. I want the best possible map and moving the least number, but taking in account all of the factors, not a directive of 600 only.
I'm the same. I think you look at all of the factors. I just wasn't willing to do the weightage here because I think we're all layman people to that. However, I do think the map maker naturally and organically, it will be prioritized. I think it's just going to be important for them to explain that, or if you're going to come and explain what the map is after, I think that's important to talk through.
Follow 5120.
So Dr. Marshausen, does that get you what you need in terms of where we are and the direction related to A?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And I just want to add, there's nothing against, I don't have anything against considering the undeveloped land across the district. I just thought it was
No, I get it. The difficulty as we go through these is we've got, 3 sentences or 2 really long sentences with item A, and there's different parts that I think we have, especially from the first meeting, interpretations of, and we are in the process of trying to clean it up. And so there are some areas, like I mentioned, I wanted the clarity around that in all parts of the district because there are other parts of our original language that I thought were ambiguous at best, and that helped provide clarity around that. I think it's fair to the community to know that the entire district is being evaluated in this process, and they're reassured of that. I had replacement amendment language to add to that. I still personally do not think that we need to have minimize in there. I think that that's a common sense approach that we would expect out of Dr. Marshausen.
Before we go on, are you making a motion?
I'm going to finish the sentence and then I'll tell you.
Okay. Okay.
I think minimizing student movement in totality is something that the superintendent should be doing. It isn't, as we've established very clearly here, it is not the priority factor. It's not the overriding factor. 5120 remains that. And so I'm not going to have an amendment that I'm going to add to that since Dr. Marshausen is on the same page with the 5 of us. But for the record, I think that we could strike it.
Is there any other changes to A? B. C. I just want to reiterate that there has been one change in C already, and that is that in considering proximity, comma, then lowercase t, travel time by bus and by private transportation, et cetera. Okay, D. And again, I will reiterate that there was a change at the end, period after year. Sophomores, juniors, and seniors should be given the option to remain in the high school where they started. In parentheses, students' family must provide transportation, end parentheses, or go to the high school to which they have been redistricted.
Mrs. Messick, just for clarification, that is an important purpose for OHSAA eligibility requirements. So putting that in there, the home is redistricted. The student can stay. If the student stays, they retain the eligibility at the school at which they started. If they choose to go, they gain eligibility without having to sit out that half of season because we're the ones who moved them. So that is in there for a specific reason and worded that way for a specific reason having to do with OHSAA eligibility requirements.
Thank you for the clarification. E. F.
I think she has.
Oh, I'm sorry, E? Back to E?
Yes, back to E. So I would like to move to amend section E by adding after Emerald the words "and to provide quarterly updates to the board."
Okay, there is a motion on the floor. So the sentence will now read, I'm going to start with, to ensure the effectiveness of instructional programming, the board directs the superintendent to evaluate and allocate resources and staff to meet the needs of the students at all 3 high schools and Emerald campus and provide quarterly updates to the board. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. McLean. Discussion.
So I'm going to start with a quote again. So as author A.J. Crabble states in his book, Great on Their Behalf, school systems only exist to improve student outcomes, and all other activities should be in service of that sole reason for existing. He goes on to say, if we want more kids scoring high scores on AP exams, we need to make more seats available in AP courses and remove barriers to participation. As we pointed out before, there is no SES-related criteria in this resolution, but we need to take active measures to maximize opportunities for student achievement and allow for the best instructional program possible within our facilities and our financial resources. I do not think it is good enough to say we will provide resources where they are needed. We need a plan. And while I know we can't build programs today in this resolution, we can add some accountability. In keeping with Policy 2120, the superintendent shall lead an improvement process that uses data to identify areas of greatest need, develop a plan to address those needs, implement the plan with integrity, and monitor and evaluate the effectiveness of the improvement process. I believe, and this is just my thoughts, it's not going into the resolution, I believe that the district should audit and assess the educational opportunities across all buildings, including the availability of courses, the number of course sections, co-curricular activities, as well as key performance indicators that support academic achievement, including but not limited to attendance rates, graduation rates, parent and community engagement and involvement, building culture, and instructional effectiveness. In addition, I would like a plan to address and improve disparities between buildings at each grade level. We need to add language that requires a plan. So in consideration, again, of this resolution and in alignment with Policy 2120, I would like to add the words to provide quarterly updates to the board.
Any further discussion?
Has this been discussed with Dr. Marshausen to this point, or anyone from, I guess, the academic team?
I talked to Dr. Marshausen and let him know that I think we need to have some protections in here that protect the effectiveness of the instructional program. But like I said, we're not building programs or anything like that in this resolution. That was just my thoughts, but we do have a policy.
So you're just asking for quarterly updates?
Yeah.
I mean, I think updates are good. And my question is, do you understand this, Dr. Marshausen? Like, or the expectation of what's being asked and the form and the depth?
It seems to me at this time that this is something that would be part of an evaluation cycle and part of a conversation that we just had about our annual goals. I am not sure that a resolution on redistricting is the place to put this. I think there are lots of opportunities that you as a board have to evaluate the superintendent and to provide input to our academic team. And without the specificity of what type of report, is it in a weekly update? Is it in a board meeting? Is it in a presentation? There are a lot of unknowns, and it seems like we're trying to address a much bigger issue by putting it in a resolution that already has an awful lot on the line. That's just my opinion.
I think it's just asking you to share what is happening to address what is already there in E. It's just saying to give us an update quarterly. Like I said, I'm not trying to build a program through this resolution, but just asking that there be a piece that this is shared with the board.
Well, I think that's very different than the sentiments that you just shared in outlining what you believe equity and outcomes are and the measures and the specifics. It's not so much asked. I think there's a lot to unpack that would be unrelated to redistricting that you're asking to include in here. If you're asking for a quarterly staffing update at the 3 high schools related to class sizes in the classes that are offered, that could be done biannually because those classes and those sections aren't going to change 4 times a year. We're going to start the year with them, and then there'll be semester. So the specifics of what you're asking, I think, would need to be laid out for me or the superintendent at the time.
Tiffany, is your intention, you had mentioned alignment to 2120, like that already exists with the plan?
There's already a policy 2120. I'm just asking for updates on how that is being followed or what progress has been being made.
For the supports.
Yeah. So there's already existing policy. Like I said, these are things that what I mentioned was things that I wouldn't want the district to focus on, but I know in this resolution it would not be appropriate to add all of those things into the resolution. So I'm just asking that we have updates.
Any further discussion? Okay, I'm going to read it again. I'm going to actually start from the board. I'm going to read the entire E with the new language. The board affirms that all students should have access to the same high-quality Dublin educational experience, regardless of which high school they attend. To ensure the effectiveness of instructional programming, the board directs the superintendent to evaluate and allocate resources and staff to meet the needs of the students at all 3 high schools and Emerald campus and to provide quarterly updates to the board. The superintendent's work should be consistent with board policy and Journey 2030, the district's strategic plan. Please call the roll.
Mrs. De Silva.
Yes.
Mrs. McLean.
Yes.
Ms. Seward,
Yes.
Mr. Valentine,
No.
and Mrs. Messick.
Yes, motion passes 4-1. Is there any for F? Okay, then in the first, be it further resolved, is there any changes? Okay, no changes. Then I want to remind you that there has already been one change in there, that the board directs superintendent that if redistricting middle schools is necessary to minimize split feeder patterns, so a middle school is split to no more than 2 high schools, then what was added, keeping the splits as equitable as possible. Then the superintendent should consider that at the same time high school redistricting is completed. The next, be it further resolved. Is there any change? And the final, be it further resolved. Okay, if those are all the changes, then if you could, if we could take just a quick recess so that Mr. Kern and I could make sure we have our language
I
correct.
just want one additional clarification, not an
Yeah,
amendment.
sure.
Going back to Mrs. De Silva's comments, that socioeconomics are not reflected within this resolution. Dr. Marshausen, I just want to make sure as you take direction from us inevitably with a vote here, that your understanding, especially given previous discussions that have taken place, socioeconomics, race, or academic outcomes, none of those are in the resolution. Do you view those in any form as a part of the consideration that you would be giving the mapmaker based off of our comments in the resolution?
They will not be part of any consideration provided to the mapmaker.
Okay, so we're going to take 2 minutes? Just a 2-minute recess so Mr. Kern and I can make sure we have the language correct before we vote on the final resolution.
Or if there's somebody else that you guys recommend we chat to. You're doing a great job. Hi, I just wanted to talk to you. I saw there were a lot of Jerome speakers. I have somebody I'm going to talk to from Scioto, but I wanted the perspective too. It kind of seems to be a lot of you guys who are speaking tonight, so I wasn't sure if anybody wanted to do a quick interview. I already talked to some TV, so I don't need to be like. I'll make it really easy for you if anyone else wants to volunteer. Sorry, I just no, you're supposed to. Sure, I don't mind. You don't mind? Okay. I'll make it easy, I promise. I'm so easy. We'll have you stand over here. Just so we don't get people in the background and everything. It's not going to be live or anything, so it'll be okay, cool. First, tell me your first and last name. How you spell it?
Anna Garver, Garver.
And then you are a parent in Dublin, right?
Yes.
And then how many kids do you have when they go to school?
2 kids, one at Depp Elementary, one at Eversole Middle School.
Okay. And so you got up and spoke today, right? Tell me a little bit about what your main concerns are and why you wanted to share your opinion today.
My main concerns are that there seems to be a
If we're
focus
ready,
on
I'm
secondary
going to
where there's the most
go
growth
through
community
the resolution. It has already been seconded for the vote. I will go through and read in the changes.
And this is for the original motion of the resolution, which was first and seconded by Mrs. Messick and Mrs. De Silva.
We have, young drivers, and it's the furthest school away
Can you
from
hear me?
where we all live, and we're just really concerned about the safety of our students.
And so with, what you've been hearing, if things go the way they're continuing to go with your kids, then instead of, you thought they'd
How
go
that
when
happened.
you maybe
I shall
were here,
pause
now
for a
you're
second.
going to Scioto. Is that something that you are hearing, what you're thinking, or what's kind of what you gathered from what they've been telling you?
I
Based
don't.
on some of the interviews.
Oh, that's crazy. Did you hear that? Yeah, but it picks up ours and then it plays through our speakers.
You got it.
We good? All right. Thank you so much. Okay, on the first page, there was no changes made. The first whereas, no changes. Now I'm going to read all of A. Student enrollment and building capacity. The priority objective is balanced enrollment with respect to student count among the 3 high schools, taking into account potential growth, including growth on undeveloped land over the next 5 to 10 years. While taking into account all other factors in this resolution, the superintendent should minimize the impact by reassigning as few students as possible, period. B, there were no changes. C, there were no changes. D, there were no changes. E, the effectiveness of the instructional program. The board affirms that all students should have access to the same high-quality Dublin educational experience regardless of which high school they attend. To ensure the effectiveness of instructional programming, the board directs the superintendent to evaluate and allocate resources and staff to meet the needs of the students at all 3 high schools and Emerald campus and to provide quarterly updates to the board, period. The superintendent's work should be consistent with board policy and Journey 2030, the district strategic plan. No other changes were made to the document. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Messick,
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva,
Yes.
Mrs. McLean,
Yes.
Ms. Seward,
Yes.
and Mr. Valentine.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Okay, Nitya. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Sorry. It's pronounced Nithya.
Nithya.
Yes.
My apologies. Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
As a junior, they stuck you up here, so thank you so much.
I'm
for being
very excited to be here. So.
Well, we're excited to have you.
Thank you.
Please go on with your update.
Good evening, everybody. I want to take a brief moment to introduce myself. My name is Nithya Cherkapalli, and I'm representing Emerald Campus. I've been a part of this district since I basically was born. I went to kindergarten here, and I'm very, very, very proud to be talking to you today. I guess let's get started. So the seniors are gone. They have completed all of their events, and I guess all that's left is graduation. Graduation is May 24th at the Schottenstein Center. Kaufman is at 1:30, Jerome is at 4:30, and Scioto is at 7:30. Overall, we think students should be looking forward to next year. I know it's not what we want to think about, like, geez, I just finished this year. But, of course, we have summer reading, volunteering, college applications. But it's best to think ahead. Also, the Kings Island trip was yesterday for seniors. Jerome and Kaufman had senior parades, and I saw a lot of great pictures, and those were really amazing. At Emerald Campus, we wrapped up IB exam season on Monday. So exciting about that. We also had our senior send-off, an ice cream party, plus all of the seniors got to make paper airplanes with their wishes and goals for the next years and fly them into the atrium. Someone gave a seal a megaphone. That was a extremely bad idea. But you know what? It was beautiful, it was really fun, and it was really, really fun to watch. We also want to introduce our next year's representatives. Myself at Emerald Campus, at Kaufman, Colin Goring, at Scioto, Nikhil Sen, and at Jerome, Lexi Gonzalez. I think on behalf of the juniors and a lot of the students in our community, I want to thank our last year's representatives, Noah, Nancy, Brick, and Asil. You guys are truly great. You did some great work, and we're really sad to see you go. Overall, I'm really excited to be working with this community, this district, and my building, and have a great summer, everyone.
Thank you so much. Mr. Andres?
Asil, could you come up here, please?
Yeah.
Just a small token of our appreciation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
It was totally breakable.
Just be careful on Sunday when you come down those stairs. Because dropping that's okay, but Sunday, you're going to be excited. Just watch each step for me, okay? Okay, she'll be in front of me, so we'll do it that way.
Thank you. On to the superintendent's comments.
My recommendation this evening is that the board approve the contracted services with Wolpert to be our GIS firm to assist with redistricting. I have a meeting scheduled with Wolpert tomorrow. Upon your approval of this resolution and approval of their contract, we will be sharing with Wolpert the information from tonight's meeting, the board policy, previous traffic studies that were done that we paid money to have done. We will hand those to Wolpert as well. And my intent during the end of May and the beginning of June is to allow Wolpert to do their thing. They will have a point of contact in the district where they will be able to ask for information. If they want to get transportation information, they'll have a single point of contact that will have them answer any questions from transportation. If they have questions on enrollment, if they have questions on scheduling, if they have questions on building square footage and such, we will run those through a single point of contact in the district. And my goal is to have a map to share with the community on Monday, June 29th.
I just want to say one more thing about Wolpert, because I do know that some people say that, well, there were numbers that they had off. Nobody could have predicted the growth that happened in Jerome, and nobody could have predicted that Nationwide would go back on their agreement as to how many houses. So although they were inaccurate for that small period of time, no company would have been accurate. I do want to state that they have just done numbers for Hilliard, and in the opening for them, they have said that in Hilliard, they have been within 4 students for growth and where it's been. So they are very highly competent in what they do. With that being said, it is recommended by the
Oh,
superintendent.
sorry, really quickly. Can I just ask a question of Dr. Marchesen? When you're working with Wolpert, you had mentioned the traffic study that you're going to provide. Is there a list of the data that you're going to give, like that would support A through F, any of those specifically? Is there a list of exactly what's going over, or is it going to be on the website, or how is that going to be collected?
We will provide them what they ask for so that they can use their professional services to create a map for us. The only document that I plan to give them tomorrow and provide access to is the traffic study, as that's a professional study that the district spent $25,000 doing last fall. So that will be provided to them. They are the firm who does our housing studies. They are the firm who does our enrollment projections. They know where our buildings are, so they are incredibly familiar with the district. They use a similar methodology for redistricting in assisting Olentangy local schools. So we will provide them what they ask for, but I will not be providing them with additional information other than the housing study. Excuse me? Traffic study.
Okay, thank you.
It is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve the contract from Wolpert Incorporated for high school redistricting services. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. De Silva. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. McLean. Please call the roll.
Mrs. De Silva?
Yes.
Mrs. McLean?
Yes.
Ms. Seward?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
And Mrs. Messick?
Yes, motion passes 5-0.
Just one thing on the agenda for this evening in the treasurer's report. We do have a donation from the Kaufman Baseball Club for purchase of coaches' apparel. That's the only thing I have for this evening for approval.
It is recommended by the treasurer that the Board of Education approve the following donation, $3,588.42 from Dublin Kaufman Baseball Club to Kaufman Baseball for the purchase of coaches' apparel. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. De Silva. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Seward. Please call the roll.
Mrs. De Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Seward?
Yes.
Mrs. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
And Mrs. Messick?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Department of Academics and Student Learning.
We have no reports tonight, but we do have on the agenda the calendar. It's the second read of our calendar for the 29-30 school year.
Thank you, Dr. Schwanke. It is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve the 2029-2030 school calendar. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. De Silva. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Valentine. Please call the roll.
Mrs. De Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mrs. McLean?
Yes.
Ms. Seward?
Yes.
And Mrs. Messick?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Department of Operations, Mr. Stark.
Nothing from operations tonight.
Thank you. Human Resources.
I've got a few things tonight. Tonight's agenda, I'll start with our certified section. We have a few administrative resignations and then 2 salary changes, and those are to correct salary amounts that we previously brought to you for approval. There are 3 new hires on tonight. Kristen Clausen is being recommended as an assistant principal at Dublin-Scioto High School. She currently works in this role at Hilliard-Davidson High School. Michael King is being recommended as an assistant principal at Kaufman High School, and he currently is working as an assistant principal at New Albany Intermediate School. And then finally, Danielle Malfara is being recommended as the coordinator of secondary pathways and partnerships on Ms. Marple's team. She currently works as coordinator of college and career county in the school district of Osceola County, Florida. We have 3 certified resignations, a technical resignation, and then 11 new hires. And then the supplementals that are on tonight are for next year's athletics. In our classified agenda, you'll see 5 resignations and 1 retirement. The retirement is Jane Ford. She will be retiring as a paraprofessional from Grizel Middle School, and she's been with Dublin for 25 years. We have 1 new hire, and the rest of the items are salary changes and leave of absence request. And then under stipends, there's just 1 stipend on tonight. It's for Leadership Academy, and this stipend is to compensate the committee members who plan this annual professional learning conference, which is buy-in for Dublin teachers. And that concludes the HR portion of tonight's agenda.
It is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve items 10A through 10C. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. De Silva. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Seward. Please call the roll.
Mrs. De Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Seward?
Yes.
Mrs. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
And Mrs. Messick?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved
Second.
by Ms. Seward.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Valentine. Please call the roll.
Ms. Seward?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mrs. McLean?
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva?
Yes.
And Mrs. Messick?